Hey everyone, hey wellness crew, and welcome to today's live stream about discovering your authenticity, finding ways to live your life being your true self, getting out of that people pleasing, getting out of living a falsehood, getting out of living in a way that you feel as though you should be, getting out of the shoulds, right? That's really what this is going to be about. And learning and discovering who you are by remembering who you are. Going back to the basics, remembering who you were when you were younger as a child, remembering what you enjoyed, remembering the things that really brought life to you, remembering the type of person that you were. And understanding that, yes, of course, change is something that we're going to experience every day, every month, every year. It's something that just is going to occur. There's nothing that we can do to control that or change that. However, if you as a person feel like you are bombarded constantly with, oh, you have to change, and oh, you have to be better, and oh, you have to be this or that, I'm here to tell you that no, you actually don't have to. Everything is a choice. It's up to you if you want to be a better version of yourself. It's up to you if you want to improve because it's you that's taking the action steps. It's you that's making that decision. It's you that ultimately gets to choose. If you're inspired by somebody else, if you're inspired by your family, if you're motivated by somebody else, if you're motivated by your friends, if you're motivated by someone that you find inspirational, that's awesome. But ultimately, all of these things are coming from you. So you want to be able to be authentically yourself. We don't always know what that means. And sometimes what we find is that we're so busy or we're so um, like not really in our heads very much, or like not in our true minds, right? Like we're not being our true selves, that we're just kind of constantly going. We're just going on this path, we're just going straight forward. We're not really stopping to think about, well, who am I, right? We're not taking the time to contemplate. We're not spending any time thinking, who am I? Who am I authentically? Who do I want to be? Not only remembering who you are, but thinking, who do I want to be? What is my goal? What is my purpose? What is my feeling towards myself? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it something that is reflective of my values and my morals and the things that I hold true to myself, that I hold close, that I hold dear, that I find important? What is important to you? You'll usually find this reflected in your actions. You'll usually find this reflected in what you spend your three most important resources on. And what are those? That's your time, your energy, and lastly, your money. So, whatever you spend those three resources on the most, that's what's most important to you. Whoever or whatever you're giving your time to most frequently, that's what's most important to you. So that's a really easy way to kind of help you discover how to be most authentically yourself, is by understanding, oh, okay, well, clearly this is something that's important to me, or clearly this is something that I enjoy, or clearly this is something that I find intriguing, or there's just something about this that I keep coming back to. So clearly this is some reflection or mirrored part of me. This is authentic to me. This is something that I hold true and dear. So let's explore that. You want to explore the things that are important to you. You want to explore the things that you find yourself attracted to. You want to explore the things that you find true to you. What interests you? What are things that are ringing true for you? What are ideas and notions that you keep coming back to that maybe you want to explore, but maybe you have a little bit of fear about? Fear is totally okay to have. Everybody experiences it. It's something that's normal, that's natural. Fear is okay. Fear can sometimes be an incredible motivator. And that's one thing that I really do enjoy about human design and the gene keys, which is something that I talk about on my channel sometimes. It really just kind of helps you find what motivates you. Um, you, for me personally, one of the things that it showed me was that guilt motivates me, right? So I'm always afraid of feeling guilty. It bothers me. It just brings back a lot of fear for me. So I will do anything to avoid feeling guilty, right? And I didn't really know that about myself. When I was younger, I had a lot of behavioral problems. I was that kid that was always, the black sheep of the group. I was always doing the wrong thing. I was always acting out. And I didn't really know why. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's very kind of you to say. So I didn't really understand why. I didn't really know myself, and you can say that that's due to immaturity, or you can say that that's due to not having a fully developed brain, right? Because our brains aren't really fully developed until we're approximately 25. Uh, you can say that it's due to all those things. But thank you so much for the like, I appreciate that. But as we get older, as we are starting to grow, right? As we're starting to take accountability for ourselves, sometimes we forget, like, we can still go back and remember who we were, and we can be ourselves, but we can be maybe the version of ourselves that now we want to be. I'm actually outside on my outdoor patio. I just have my backdrop and I am on my favorite chair. The sun's over there. It's a little bit windy today. I'm in Texas, so we had a tornado warning not too long ago, so we're still experiencing a little bit of wind, and we're going to have a cold front soon. So, hi. So, anyways, but yeah, so when you start to kind of discover, what you're about and what you really stand for, instead of just conforming to the things around you. Thank you very much. So, I'm from Texas. So, what I have found to be really important, at least on my journey and on the journey of a lot of my clients, is being able to spend time with ourselves, being able to spend time really enjoying the journey and really contemplating, right? What do we want for ourselves? What is the vision that we have for ourselves? Not as far as like what we're gaining materialistically, not what we're gaining in a relationship, not what we're gaining with all of that type of stuff, but who are we on the inside? What type of person are we? Right? If we didn't like who we were when we were younger, or if we found that we can grow from that person, or if we find that at this moment we're not really a fan of ourselves, that's okay. There's always room to grow and to change. We can always find those wounds and we can work on them and we can fix them. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes a lot of deep digging and deep work, but we can definitely do that. It's something that's possible for everybody. It's not something that is elusive and something that takes like, you know, a whole bunch of incredible therapy or even coaching with me, right? This is something that you can actually do by being just very diligent and very committed, right? Having a lot of discipline. And discipline, in my opinion, is something that you learn. Discipline is something that you learn by practice, 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 right? It's just doing the thing every day. Hi, Carlos. I'm doing great. Thank you so much. So it's just doing it. It's just finding your tools. What I have found is through workbooks, right? CBT, DBT workbooks are really helpful. Learning that there are a lot of cognitive distortions out there that we're not even realizing that sometimes we're experiencing, or that a lot of people are experiencing, and is just part of the whole conforming to how people are thinking and things like that. There's a lot of like black and white thinking out there. There's a lot of all or nothing type of thinking. And we don't have to think that way, right? That doesn't have to be who you are authentically. That doesn't have to be the way that you see things. You can start to see things from a different point of view. So it's just depending on how you want to view things. Thank you so much for the like. I appreciate that. It's just deciding to, thank you so much for asking. It's just deciding on who do you want to be? What do you want to be? Coming back to yourself and really understanding you are good as you are, and you can make the choice, if you would like, to really connect with yourself and get to know yourself. And you might be surprised that you're not the person that you thought that you were. And that's what I found, right? I was so stuck for so many years in this idea of constantly feeling like I had to please everybody else. I was that person that would say yes to everything without really acknowledging myself or thinking about, how is this going to affect me? How is this going to affect the things that are my true priorities? And instead, I was putting things that weren't as important to me, really. Um, I was putting those things ahead because I felt like I had to say yes to everybody. I felt like I had to please everybody, right? I'm from Texas. So it's just one of those things where when you start to kind of think about it, when you start to kind of contemplate, when you start to kind of spend some time with yourself and not allow yourself to, have constant distractions or constant, things where you're letting your brain just kind of go everywhere and not really deal with what's going on inside. Whether you've dealt with trauma or you've dealt with I would say mainly trauma is kind of a really big one, but other forms of things that are distressing, or if you have a high stress job, or if you're having something that is constantly raising your cortisol levels to where you're always just like on high alert, right? Or if you're always like stressed out, or if you're always just kind of in that fight or flight mode, that's not healthy for your body in any capacity. So, really being able to slow things down a bit and being able to connect with yourself and being able to learn more about yourself. Oh, that's so cool, Carlos. That's really neat. Being able to connect with yourself and being able to learn more about yourself. I think that's incredibly important. Now, sometimes you will get feedback from others, and they will say, when you start to say no, if you happen to also have the problem or my former problem of being a constant people pleaser, you'll get feedback of, why are you being so selfish now? That's a big one. And what that is a guilt trip. What that really is, why are you no longer serving me first? Why are you no longer serving me first? That's what that question really is. And I really want you to think about that if you happen to be a people pleaser. Thank you so much for the like. I really appreciate that. It's not that you're becoming selfish. And I'm not saying, especially if you're faith based, I'm not saying that you should put yourself before, whatever your faith is, however you choose to celebrate your religion or anything like that. What I'm saying is, choosing and understanding that there are healthy ways to live your life, and that there's healthy ways to be, and that when you're not living authentically, it's really easy to spot. It's really easy to kind of, you can just kind of tell with somebody you don't really believe somebody, you don't really want to believe somebody. You can tell when something's amiss. You can tell when someone's not being authentic. You can tell when someone's just not really themselves. When they don't, it's just when it's a little bit off. Maybe you find that it's difficult for you to connect with other people. Or maybe you have a victim mentality and you find that people are always leaving you, or you find that people are always hurting you, or you find that people are constantly. Oh, Carlos, I am so sorry. That is definitely high stress. That is definitely something that can lead to PTSD. That is definitely something that must have been overwhelming. I'm so sorry that you went through that. Thank you so much for feeling comfortable enough to share that. Thank you. So you definitely want to think about all of the things that you are experiencing. Really try to see things not only from your own perspective, but try to see things from other people's perspectives as well. And understand that not everyone's perspectives, just because we are starting to maybe, grow a little bit and see things from other people's perspectives, it doesn't mean that the other person's perspective is correct. It just means that we're now able to see things from different points of view. You know how they kind of say, like, there's always different versions of the truth? Well, I like to think of it more like there's different stories that we tell ourselves, right? There's different ways that we perceive things. I don't think there's so much different versions of the truth because there are facts. There are facts that are just true, right? But sometimes we just see things differently, and that's based on our perception. It's based on if we're living in this victim mentality, which you can choose to live in if that's what you want to do, right? I've been through a lot of things that I can definitely say that it would be very easy for me to live in a victim mentality, right? It would be very easy for me to do that. But I don't want that for you. And I certainly didn't want that for me. But I chose to live in that for a long time. And once I took responsibility for making that choice, once I took responsibility, thank you, Carlos. Once I took responsibility for my part in choosing to allow something to really weigh on me so much, because really, when we're being triggered, it's not the person that's triggering us, it's not their fault. It's us that's allowing the trigger to bother us so much. And sometimes that's hard to hear, and a lot of people don't like to hear it, and a lot of people don't want to listen to that. And oftentimes, as well, I'm very careful and hesitant to say that, because then people that are intentionally trying to push buttons will say, well, hey, I heard from this wellness coach that, and they're over here pushing buttons and trying to trigger. They'll say, well, I heard from this wellness coach that it's your fault. It's your problem that you're being triggered. It's your fault. It's your problem that you're allowing me to bother you. Right? Oh my goodness. I am so glad that y'all feel comfortable enough to share this, but that is so frightening. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Worley, for sharing that with us. So, yeah, so there's things that are. Rob, okay. Hello, my ex lived very much as a victim. I supported her as much as I could, but it became too much. I still think about it all the time, though. How do you move past that sort of thing? Okay, that is a really great question. So, as far as moving past it, when what is it? I guess I need a little bit more information about that. Is it that you're experiencing guilt, or is it that you're like, what is it that you're experiencing about that relationship that you need to move past? Are you finding that you're still drawn to people that have that victim mentality? What's the specific issue that you're experiencing? Or is it just having, memories and stuff like that of that relationship kind of still with you? Guilt. Okay. So what you have to understand, Rob, is that there's nothing that you can do or there's nothing that you could have done to get that person out of the victim mentality and memories. Okay. So there's nothing that you could have done to get her out of that victim mentality, it's a choice that each person has to make for themselves, right? And that's not easy to hear for a person that's in their victim mentality. They have to get to a certain place where they're able to see that they can choose to take accountability, because when you are able to take accountability, that's when you gain your power to get out. That's when you gain your power to not have whatever, that traumatic event was, whatever that problem was, whatever that issue was. You're not giving that power anymore. You're taking the power back. And now you're putting yourself in a position to be able to heal. But you, Rob, you can't fix that for her, right? Maybe you wanted to fix it for her. Maybe you wanted to, do that, but that's not within your control, unfortunately. That's only within her control. Now, having memories and things like that, that's almost like having, I would say, like PTSD triggers, right? Maybe you're going to be out with somebody and they do something or say something that reminds you of her. Or maybe just something for whatever reason, maybe it'll just be something that replays in your mind or something kind of like that, right? Things like that. You're going to need to just kind of understand that when you're experiencing this, that you want to take a deep breath and be like, that was something that was out of my control. That was something that was within her control. And I'm going to choose to release this guilt. Is it going to work the first time? No. Is it going to work the second time? No. This is going to be one of those practice, practice, practice things. This is going to be training your mind to get out of that. This is going to be training your mind to teach yourself, okay, this is repetition. This is just repetition, to understand I don't need to have guilt about something that I didn't cause. And I don't need to have guilt about something that was completely out of my control, that was not up to me, right? I can tell, obviously, that you must have a very good heart, and you must have really gone through it, and it's a lot to really try to be a supportive partner to someone that has experienced things or that is in that victim mindset. I don't think that gets said enough. I don't think that people that are supportive towards people that have that victim mentality and that victim mindset, I don't think that they get enough credit for the things that they go through and the things that they see when people are in that victim mindset. People that have been victims of various things, they do and have a lot of behaviors that can be very alarming. And that affects the partners, that affects family members, that affects friends, that affects everyone that's really close to them. So, it doesn't get said enough that they, have also associated trauma honestly, with it, when the person is unfortunately unable to get out of that mindset. So hopefully you find, that helpful, but that is really what you would be able to do. Also, seeing somebody on a professional level might be helpful. She was a strong woman, a college out, and I did everything I could to support her, but she just let everyone control her. Okay, okay. I wasn't sure, but I thought it was you. Okay, awesome. Yeah. So that's just one of those things where it's really interesting. It's a really interesting dynamic, right? Because our minds and our bodies are two separate things, right? We want to have a mind body connection as much as we possibly can, right? In fact, that's part of living authentically, is having that mind body connection. Um, but sometimes when we have that victim mentality, yeah, we can on the outside maybe appear to be very strong. We can have a lot of accomplishments. We can be, um, very determined and very, you know, whatever. But it's just one of those things. Okay. I apologize for that. That is not something that I like a supportive community, so I apologize for that user's comments and stuff like that. As you know, Rob, the reason that I do this, the reason that I'm on here is because I like to give back and I like to give my time for people that don't normally have the opportunity to work with me. So um, please don't allow that to make you feel unsafe or uncomfortable sharing. But yeah, and it's kind of a mind death, you know what I mean? It really is when you see that someone that has so many gifts and things like that are just unable to get out of that. And it's definitely a mind shift. It was something that made me very uncomfortable when I, dealt with it myself. I was an athlete. I had a lot of stuff, going for me as well, but I was very much kind of like that too. Very much feeling as though I had to please everybody else, feeling as though I had to do everything for everybody else, and I wasn't really taking care of myself or taking care of the things that actually were priorities for me. I wasn't putting that, those things ahead of all these other things that were BS, really, that really weren't that important. But that at the moment, it felt like, oh, I have to, because I have to say yes. So it can happen to anybody, right? And it's not until you make the decision or you make the choice. And as you know, we can't make choices for other people. So it'll just be a lot of telling yourself and the repetition of, I can let go of the guilt because I didn't do anything wrong. I was just trying to be supportive, you know? So but yeah, so when we are being our authentic selves, sometimes, yeah. So what I will say, it's interesting that you bring that up. So what I will say about the spirals, these spirals have such a strong effect on the supportive group, like the real, like close people to the person that's experiencing the victim mentality. These spirals have such a strong effect on that person. On the supportive people. They have such a strong effect because it's not just um obviously, yes, the victim mentality person is in pain, is experiencing something, totally negative, absolutely, and it's hard to see that, but you're seeing it. So it is very difficult. It is something that's very hard to experience. Right, because you feel tied to it. Oh, yeah. Hey. Yeah, it's just kind of one of those things, where it's like you have to be able to understand that it, this is what happens when you have a person that is stuck in that victim mentality. It is definitely going to affect the partner. Uh, Absolutely. It's going to affect the people around the partner. And it's really something that help is there and available and sometimes needed, depending on how long the relationship was for, depending on how long you were in that situation, because kind of what happens is almost a type of brainwashing. I'm not saying that it was intentional or anything, I'm not saying that, but remember, repetition, 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 right? So okay, so we're talking that's 24 months. So depending on when it started to come out of the box, depending on when you kind of started to see it, depending on when you started to kind of live the cycles of that, right? You kind of have to remember it takes a while to kind of heal those wounds. So that's why it's going to be very important for you to really keep up with the repetition of when you start to experience these things, when you're out with somebody else, or when you have someone that's a reminder, or when you have, anything kind of that brings back that, just even like a tinge of that feeling, you just have to remember, um, you know, that was a problem that was not something that I was able to fix or heal because it wasn't my job. And it wasn't something that was within my wheelhouse of control. It was only within that person's control. So, yeah. And typically that's kind of how it goes, right? So there's and this is in most relationships. I'm not even going to say that this is just solely in when you are in relationships that end up having an unhealthy balance, um and in sometimes healthy relationships as well, right? You have that honeymoon period, and then you kind of start to see the realness. You kind of start to see, oh, that person isn't, exactly maybe what they were presenting to be, right? Because we're not always going to want to be our 100% authentic selves. And I always, well, and this is just a normal human thing. You want to present with your best foot forward, especially when you're dating, especially when you're going out. Thank you so much for the like. I appreciate that. Especially when you're going for a job interview and yeah, you don't want, you don't feel comfortable sharing, real things at first, which is completely normal and natural, and why would you, right? um but what sometimes can happen, and this isn't necessarily, this would be, I think, more codependency, honestly, is when you start to um have that codependent type of style of relationship, that's when things become really, really sticky, and it's very, very difficult, and it becomes a web. And this web, right, of entanglement, it's, thank you so much for the like. I appreciate that. This web of entanglement, once the relationship ends, it's okay. So when there's codependency, that means that, let's say, for example, that you were the main person of support. And maybe you became, in some way, potentially, right? Maybe you kind of liked being the hero at first. Maybe at first, when it wasn't so bad, you enjoyed being the hero. So that dynamic was created. Or, and this can happen in a lot of different kinds of relationships. Codependency just means that it's a lot of both, like having that inseparability and having it long term throughout the relationship. Um, but having that kind of get to an unhealthy status, right? And these are some kind of things that may not be 100% true for you, but maybe something you might want to sit and think about. Maybe it does hit you somewhere, and maybe it's like, oh yeah, maybe that's a little bit true for me. Um, it just becomes this dynamic because I've seen it. Um, I've experienced it when I was a lot younger, and it's kind of one of those things where when you really start to unpack things, that's when you really want to be honest with yourself, right? It's going to take a lot of practice and work. And if you find that this is something that is not going away, if you find that this is something that it's been, a good amount, like a good chunk of time, and you're still like, you know, like having a hard time, definitely I would say look into coaching. And if you find that that's not something that's going to be enough, look into therapy, look into, something that's going to be someone that can be with you through a process, because you really want to be able to work this out as much as you can. 3 months. I mean, when you've been with someone for 2 years, it'll probably take 3 to 6 months to really get your footing. Some people, might tell you, oh, no, that's a lot of time to really get over someone. I think it's healthy to take some time. I would almost say too that you might want to maybe take a step. Thank you so much for the like. I appreciate that. That you might want to take a step back from exploring dating right now. Take a step back and kind of work on you a little bit, because this is something obviously that's affecting you. And just kind of take a little bit of time for yourself. And then once you're, oh, I see. Okay. So was this like your first relationship, or was this like um maybe the first one, or maybe one that lasted the longest, or maybe one that was like a longer term for you in your experience? Because then that's an interesting component, because then that would mean that makes a lot more sense as to why this is kind of hitting you a little bit harder. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So then definitely 3 months is not a long time if this is one of your longer term relationships. And I'm really glad that you're able to see that, like, oh, this really isn't something that is my strong suit. um, you know, that's okay. If it's something that you do want to be your strong suit, there's definitely tools and there's definitely things that you can work on, and there's definitely things that you can be honest about with yourself. I definitely think coaching or therapy would be something that would be good for you to look into if having a long-term relationship is something that's important to you. If working on other things as well is something that's important to you. If it's, just something that you feel like you would be able to kind of do on your own, because there are some people that are able to kind of, work their magic and just kind of, have the tools and develop the tools and I mean, because the internet's a wild place and there's a lot of really helpful information on there. Um, you can do that too, of course. I think that there's great options out there. But I think having somebody that has definitely worked with somebody that has been through a that is helpful with relationship stuff. Reaching out for solid coaching. Gosh. So I do a lot of relationship coaching myself. But in your particular case, I would definitely look into therapy, a licensed professional, only because I feel like since there was codependency issues, online or in person, whatever you feel most comfortable with. Yeah. I prefer like I mean all I do is online and remote coaching. But I think that for some people it's really helpful to go in person. So it just depends on what your preference is and what you feel like is going to work best for you and what's going to work best for your lifestyle and your schedule, of course, right? So if like doing something online or remote is easier, you can definitely do that. But I find that when you're working with certain types of issues, in person can be incredibly helpful. Absolutely. Yeah, you can definitely look into that. I have no problem chatting with you. We could always do a consultation. You just have to send an email. It's actually in the description of my channel. But yes, Chris, that's thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. You're welcome, Rob. You take care. Thank you so much for joining the live stream. It was very nice talking to you again. Um, Chris, yeah, absolutely. So we definitely absorb information. We definitely have to, it's kind of like learning styles, right? So when we're thinking about things and thinking about how to learn, there's different ways to learn, right? There's visually, there's audibly, there's kinesthetically. There's a few different ways. I think there's actually 5 different ways, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head right now. Um, what I have found that is really helpful for a lot of people, and that seems to stick for a lot of people, is kinesthetically. So, what does that mean? That means doing the work, or like doing it, becoming it, practicing it, physically doing it. So it's not just reading a book sometimes, or it's not just listening to somebody on YouTube talk about something, right? It's getting an idea, right? That's great. But then putting it into practice. So if you're in a relationship right now, you can definitely put certain things into practice, but you have to have that communication. You have to be able to communicate. And that's where we're having a lot of things falter, is when there's not that communication to begin with, when we're having problems communicating, or if we ourselves are not efficient communicators, when we ourselves are not taught how to be efficient communicators, right? And this can change. There's going to be, thank you, Chris. There's going to be times for all of us, right? That maybe we're just not in a place where we can be efficient communicators. Maybe we're triggered. Maybe we're having a bad day. Maybe something just happened that put us in a mood. And so it's not going to be, the best time for us to effectively communicate. That's okay. But knowing that, right? So that's being authentic to ourselves, knowing that it's like, okay, so right now may not be the best time to communicate with my partner, or the best time to communicate with my child, or the best time to communicate with my family or my friend or this person or that person, right? Knowing when to communicate is definitely a good and very important thing to know when you're learning about being more authentically yourself, learning your communication style, learning how you are currently communicating, and does that need to be improved, right? And this is something so for me personally, I'm very blessed and I have a really good support system. um, so that's one thing that I have going for me that some people don't. But I always say, if you don't have a really supportive family, you can build one. You can always build one. You can always find a community, whether it's online, whether it's developing friends along the way, whether it's finding someone that you just connect with and then keeping in contact with them, right? Whatever it may be, you can grow and build your family, right? You can create your own if you don't have one that's super supportive or super stable. Because I think having that human connection, having that support system, that's going to be something that's really important when it comes to feedback. Because I think feedback is important, but feedback from the right people. Because again, we don't want to be people pleasers, but we do want to have, thank you so much for the like, I appreciate that. But we do want to have people in our lives. Hi. But we do want to have people in our lives that we can have some type of trust in, and that we know can give us feedback that is honest, and feedback that is going to be something that we can believe and trust. Understanding, yes, it's still their perception. This is still, coming from them, but feedback that, that we can value, feedback that we can be like, okay, this person is saying this not from a place of anything, but from a place of love. Um, So I think people pleasing, it stems from a lot of different things, right? Oftentimes it stems from things that you experience in childhood and experience from different types of events that occur in your lifetime. So people pleasers, it's not something to be, disgusted by or to make fun of or to whatever. It's just something that you can develop the skills and have your toolbox and learn to grow out of. Thank you so much for the like. I appreciate that. And there are, of course, men that are rejected by women. It's something that happens every day. Thank you, Gary. It's something that happens every day, and they have different reasons for that. Right? Men get rejected by women for different reasons, and sometimes they're not sure. Sometimes they don't know, and sometimes they'll say, "Well, I don't know," or "I'm not sure," and then you start to dig deeper. Especially, when I have someone as a client, working with them, and then I kind of find out really what it is, or I find out the behavioral pattern, or I find out what I'll say sometimes is the ick. Okay. That's my like layman's term. So there can sometimes be something that is an ick. And that's just something that is turning women off, something that someone is doing and they don't even know or recognize it. And that's why it's so important to really know yourself authentically and to be able to be honest with yourself about who you are, knowing yourself, knowing all of your qualities, the good and the bad, being honest with yourself, okay? And understanding. Right. Exactly. And it's something that is also what I really want to the men that are listening, if there's anyone that does get rejected a lot, what I would that's great. I'm glad that you are. I'm really glad that you are. That's great. What I do want you to know is that sometimes when you're told no, it's actually not about you. I want you to really hear me right now. Sometimes when you're told no, it has nothing to do with you. Sometimes the other person has stuff going on or is in a relationship or already has, something else happening in their lives. Or they're not in a place, right? Just sometimes it has nothing to do with you. And that's just the truth of it. But it's very easy to personalize and it's very easy to really take it to heart. And it's very easy, especially if it's happening on a basis that is kind of often. And that's something that I would really like you to kind of think about too is if this is something that's happening often, what does that mean? That means that you're asking or talking to a lot of women. So, what I want you to think about is what are your standards? How are you meeting these people? How soon are you trying to pursue someone, right? If we're honest with ourselves, then these are questions to ask. These are questions to really think about. If we're thinking about relationships, if we're thinking about um, that you try, okay, that you try to talk, okay. So when you're saying that you try to talk, what does that mean? When you're saying that you're trying to talk, what exactly are you saying? Is this in person? Is this online? What exactly are we saying? I like to try to communicate as clearly as possible. Although I do understand that on YouTube live streams, sometimes people don't like to share, their all their stuff, and I understand that completely. So if this is something that you don't want to go down the rabbit hole and pursue, that is totally okay. I understand. Um, but there's things that you can be coached on, and there's things that you can kind of learn, um tips and tricks and things like that. Okay. So, so you're coming from a compliment basis. So there may be, and this is something that I will say personally, sometimes depending on how that is being said to me, where that's being said to me, right? So location, environment, um, you're seeing that you like their makeup. So obviously this is in person. So is this just you're going up to a woman and saying, "I like your makeup"? Is this the first thing that you're saying to somebody? Because I would say, if it was me, I would say that maybe complimenting an item of clothing or complimenting an accessory like a bag or a piece of jewelry might be something that's a little bit better to compliment, only because when we're talking about makeup, that's something that can be very personal to women. Yeah. And sometimes women don't really want to be complimented initially, just straight off the bat. Sometimes that's not what we want. Um, and also too, it can be, and this is just for some people, um, they don't really want their makeup to be noticed. There's some people that they don't want to feel as though like, oh, you mean you can tell that I'm wearing a lot of makeup, or oh, you can tell that I'm, like that might put their defenses up a little bit. Maybe finding something else to compliment, like their clothing, or finding something else to chat about, or maybe paying more attention to what they're paying attention to, following their line of sight, following their eyes. What are they looking at? What are they paying attention to? Just follow their eyes, right? Follow their eyes. What are they looking at? And then what can you start a conversation on based on what they're looking at, based on what they're paying attention to? Also, who are they with? Do you think, depending on who they're with, do they even want to be approached? Or are you potentially coming off as that guy that's a bother, Potentially. I'm not saying that you are, I'm just saying that these are all potentials. Well, then, if then that's already like, then that that's not rejection, that's them holding their own boundaries. That's what that is. That's them holding their boundaries. Giving somebody a compliment and then them, shying away because they're with their boyfriend, of course, then that's going to be offensive to them, and that's going to be offensive to their boyfriend. That's going to be offensive to, I mean, yeah, that's definitely not going to be acceptable, because um, yeah, no, that's crossing a line for sure. So that's not rejection, that's overstepping a boundary for sure. And you have to kind of know then, okay, so maybe then what's going on is authentically for you. Right. Okay, and I understand that. But why would you be approaching somebody that's already in a relationship? You need to authentically know yourself, and you need to kind of see, like, what is it that you need? What is it that you're trying to fulfill by doing something behavioral wise like that? What are you looking to feed inside of yourself that you don't have right now? Are you not getting enough attention? Do you not have a good group of male friends that are supportive? Do you not have any friends that are female that can be supportive to you as well when you're on your journey of trying to meet people? Are you unable to have female friends because you're always trying to, right? And these are questions that you would like to know. Okay, and it's good to have a best friend. That's great. It's good to have a best friend. I would definitely encourage you to stop this behavior for right now. Take some time for yourself and really get to know yourself a little bit and really spend some time and try to see what is it that I'm missing? Is this something that I'm, is this attention seeking? Is this, am I lonely? Am I what am I feeling? What am I feeling or what am I trying not to feel? Right? So think about it that way. What am I feeling or what am I trying not to feel? Right. Hi, Nicholas. Right. So there's things that you can do to support you. It's going great. Thank you. There's things that you can do to support you, right? When you're feeling down, when you're feeling depressed, if you need support, you can reach out to a healthcare professional. You can reach out to supportive members of your support group. Let them know what's going on. But don't have it turn into this like cycle of, oh, I'm feeling down, and then like there's never any type of resolution. What we want to do is be able to talk about our feelings but try to find a resolution. Well, I do one-on-one wellness coaching. This is something that I do. You can find my email in the description of my channel. It's cultofwellnessco@gmail.com. We can set up a consultation and we can go from there if you would like to, Nick. I have no problem with that. But it's just, these are the kinds of things. This is why I go live, right? I like to have an idea of what I want to talk about. But sometimes in these live chats, we start to kind of go into other topics, and I have no problem with that at all, because I do this because I know that there's some people that don't have the opportunity to always work with me. And when I do my lives, I do them spontaneously. I don't schedule them. So it's because I'm working in between other things, right? So you can definitely do that if you would like to reach out. You can reach out to that email address and ask for a consultation. The consultation is free. And then after that, of course, it's not, but there is a free 15-minute consultation that we can do. And I would love to be able to help you if that's something that you feel like you need. So thank you so much for the like. I appreciate that. But yeah, it's not always easy out there. It's not always easy, especially when we are not sure about who we are as a person, especially when we're not giving ourselves enough time, when we're not recognizing. Yeah, so I actually have worked with some people that did that. And I'm not going to say that it's a problem, but I am going to say that you are getting information from the internet, right? So basically all you're doing is you're doing research, which I encourage people. If you want to do research, do it. If you want to, learn techniques and learn things, I mean, that's great. You can do that. I know that ChatGPT has a coaching function on there. And there's some people that use that have used it. I get it. If that's something that you're comfortable with doing, continue to do that. But the way that you've communicated to me as of right now doesn't seem to be producing the effects that you want to have produced. You know, it doesn't seem like it's reaching the core issues, the core wounds that you need to have addressed. So you can definitely continue to do that, right? But do you think that it's helping in the way that you really need to be helped? I don't know. Only you can answer that. right? Because that's the whole thing, is being authentically yourself is continuing to be honest with yourself. And it's great that you're being honest about your habits. It's great that you're being honest about the things that you're already trying right now. That's amazing. Thank you so much for the like. I appreciate that. That's great. But what we want to do is have habits and have things that we're doing that are going to help us reach the person that we want to be, or reach the goals that we want to achieve, right? Or be able to find the authentic version of ourselves that not only we are, but that we also want to be. So, all right, I have about 5 more minutes. If anybody has any more questions or anything else, like I said, I have about 5 minutes left, and then I do need to go. Um, but yeah, it's not always comfortable living authentically. It really isn't. It's not always comfortable. It's not always something that is easy to do. It does require integrity. It does require honesty. And sometimes the person that it's hardest to be honest with is ourselves. And it's hard to admit things to ourselves sometimes, because there's times that we're very judgmental with ourselves and we're very self-critical. If you've ever heard that term, that we are our harshest critics at times, that can be true. Absolutely. So learning to not be your own harshest critic, learning to be supportive of yourself, learning how to build your support network, learning how to communicate in the most effective way. Well, that starts with you. That starts with the way that you talk to yourself. That starts with the way that you engage with yourself mentally, right? It really just starts with you, and with what you want to do, and with what your goals are, and with what your um, with whatever it is that you want to achieve. It starts with you, and knowing where you're at this moment, and then knowing where you want to be. It's not always easy, right? And it's easy to be like, well, I just want to be like everybody else. And it takes a little bit more thinking than that. It takes a little bit more than that. It's not about being normal, right? That term, I think, is um definitely not one of my favorites. um I think it's more about living a life that not only serves you, but that you can be of service, right? I'm not talking about people pleasing, but I'm talking about being of service because it can fulfill you, because it can, um, yes, it can be of being of service means, yes, that you can help others, but also it can be something